We are artists of the breath, and so often the breath gets left behind. It's an afterthought. Well, in terms of what you're talking about, it's easy to get on stage and just kind of throw ourselves. I mean, when I was a student, that's what I did. I mean, not that I tried to put on a show, but I just threw all my effort randomly at what I was doing. And then, through the decades, you refine your effort so that it's actually, the right effort in the right place at the right time,
Right.
so that the story is not obscured, so that the story becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And for us as woodwind players or wind players, for that breath not to be obstructed at all, because that's the musical message. And that's where the music has to come from, is in the breath, not in, not that we need to be in a straitjacket or sit
Right.
still, but just understanding how we can best support the musical message.
Right. And the breath is something I know that you talk about a lot and have talked about in other interviews, but it's something that we have to consciously work at. It's not just something, well, I know how to take a breath. It should be no problem. Ron Paul used to sort of say that. Of course, he knew more about the body and breath than anybody. He just didn't talk about it. He had studied to be a thoracic surgeon as a young guy before he went AWOL to escape the Nazis and went to Paris. But the study of breath and actually working at breathing and sonority every day is so essential. And I can testify, as you get older, it becomes harder. It really does. But without the breath, as wind players, we're really doing nothing. And certainly Arnold Jacobs made that apparent in this country with his teachings through the brass players and eventually wind players and singers in a big way. And I think it's become more understood by players, but I don't know how much of it is emphasized in the teaching at the various universities and colleges, quite frankly. I don't think it's being emphasized quite enough.
Well, I think it's the root of everything. It's the root of everything. And I mean, I remember when I was younger, I see my students doing this, and I sort of disregarding the breath, because it's, we've got so many other things that we're trying to develop, and it's easy to ignore the breath. And so I tell my students, look, it's not like just putting gas in the car to go from A to B. The breath is your music.
Yeah.
Nothing else can do it. Not your fingers, not your vibrato, nothing else can carry your music. It's the breath. And so you need to get command of it, or at least be in right relationship to it. And
Sure.
And so yeah, I always love to start my practice with two types of breathing, and I kind of titrate between them. So one that I call oceanic breathing, which is very long, slow in-breaths, because many students have got the habit of breathing a little bit too late and last minute and stressfully. So they sort of like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I get them to sort of breathe in for 4 beats, and then do their long tones with a metronome. 4 beats on a B, slurring 4 beats on a B flat, and you can, 6 beats, whatever is comfortable, but
Right.
just breaking that habit of just a kind of useless student breath,
Right.
and then expecting miracles after. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so having a peaceful relationship with the breath is something that I've worked on for years and years and years. So there's the oceanic breathing of the long inhalation and then the long, slow, controlled exhalation, and allowing the ribs to go on a journey, just allowing the body to, that natural exchange. And something I'm really interested in is removing antagonism. So it's not push and pull, as is often taught, but real support is just a beautiful balance of the in and out breath, uh, dynamic balance. And so naturally, when you get to the end of your out breath, there's naturally a rebound. And we can feel that also at high speeds with the rebounding breath. There's sort of the body knows naturally how to rebalance itself. And of course, this is super important on the flute because, we feel like we're drowning half the time. Because we waste so much, just the nature of it. I think we need as much breath as a tuba player. I think it was
Right.
even Jacobs that said that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so just finding right relationship with this natural rebound of the breath. So I love using Newton's law of physics. To every action there's an equal and opposite
Reaction.
reaction. So the out breath will automatically be replaced by the in breath if we can leave the breathing mechanism alone. And so, for example, for us on the flute, often there can be a lot of holding in the arms, in the upper arms, or clenched fingers, or lobster pincers, as I say, and even our listeners can try, even just making a lobster pincer, pressing hard and trying to take a breath. It's really constricted.
Yeah.
So often the musculature of the arms and hands can interfere with the musculature of the breathing mechanism. So that's another reason I'm so interested in the Alexander technique, is leaving all of that alone, open and free,
Right. Can
so
you?
that the breath is uninhibited.
Right. And of course, not to omit the fact that the brain is involved as in an active way that we don't consciously think of, but the brain is sensing uh, what's going on in the breathing mechanism and knows when we're getting to the point when we're out of breath, uh, and that we can go into a big detailed discussion of the nerves coming from the uh, top of the spinal cord into the diaphragm, but that's not the point of it. But the point is that it has to be addressed every day, and in this first, what you call the oceanic way. And what's the second approach to the breathing that you do?
Is the rebound breath.
Okay,
So I do a lot of just bouncing the breath without any articulation, just ha, 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 like that. Or and singers talk a lot about the pulsations, and then just sort of singing on the pulsations. So coming back to Arnold Jacobs, this idea of singing on the breath, or his idea of song and wind. That's the
right,
title of his
yes,
book.
yes,
You have your song, which is your musical message, and then the wind that will deliver that message. It's beautiful. It's so beautifully simple.
yeah,
And so sometimes I will do maybe I might even play a beautiful phrase. Trying to think of something. The beginning of the Prokofiev sonata, and then you just join those pulsations together. So you're really singing on the breath, not singing on muscle. So
interesting.
so
Right,
you've got to kind of get the wind in your sails, and it's dynamic, it's active, but there's no antagonism in it.
and those subdivided eighth notes that you're playing, those are uh, uh, air breaths where you just
Yeah.
you're
So,
stuck.
so, 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 so. And it's important not to be too tight in the tummy muscles. Really, I just keep my tummy muscles quite free, and there's effort release. So it's never effort. It's not
Right.
Because
Not not
then you don't get any rebound. Then you don't get
right.
any rebound of the
Right.
breath. So it's
Right.
just inviting this elasticity, and the ribs are elastic and this
Right.
freedom of movement,
Right. So
and
it's
there's
not
not
right.
rigidity.
So you're not catching back here in the laryngeal area at all.
Yes,
Right. You don't want to have that where you feel like a
yeah.
choking sensation. Right. And
Just in the belly.
That's also important for developing the vibrato later on, so that this doesn't get too involved in disturbing the vibrato.
That's right.
You know.
So in a way, the rebound breaths are just a speeded up version of the oceanic breaths.
Right. Yeah.
And often I'll sing and play. So singing and playing. And that breath just comes in like a boomerang on its own because it's so natural the way we're blowing out and
Right.
singing. It's so natural. It's not like now I must play the flute and tighten muscles and push. No, it's
Right.
it's
Yeah, and certainly Robert Dick has written very well and offered some wonderful books dealing with singing and playing. And I actually, um, I do the same even on saxophone and clarinet. That it takes away the tension or whatever stress you might be generating there, and it also just sort of after you do that, it sort of like frees the sound.
frees the breath. It opens up the resonance, the
Yeah,
resonating chambers in the body. It
yeah.
loosens the jaw a
The
little bit,
right,
softens the
right,
jaw.
right. The oropharynx is
Yeah,
enlarged, and yeah, it's very interesting how that all occurs. And sometimes I find almost not to the same degree, but just flutter tonguing, playing a scale flutter tonguing down can give you the same sense of that because you're releasing whatever tension you might have in the tongue. And getting the air to move the tongue. So it's,
that's right. You're getting your ducks in a row, so to say,
yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
you're getting rid of what you don't need, and then you're inviting what you do need, which is this
right,
dynamic
right,
air flow.
right. Yeah, great. That's great.
Not just muscles, but actual. I say to my students, for the audience to be moved, something has to move through you, and
Yeah,
that's your breath. I mean, that's literally your breath.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Let me just change direction for a second, and talk about your instruments and your instrument choices. Because when I heard you play the Poulenc Sonata about 6 weeks ago, and then there's the Dute Francais d'Histoire, I think it was. Um, I think you told me you were playing William Bennett's Louis Lot for that concert. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
Uh, no, it's partially correct. I was playing his head joint,
Oh, the
his
head.
Louis
Okay.
Lot, his Louis Lot head joint on
Okay.
my Louis Lot body.
Oh.
So 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 I have two flutes. I have a beautiful Louis Lot from 1875,
Wow.
um, and and then William Bennett very very generously left me one of his Louis Lot flutes, which is from the Villette era. So there was my Louis Lot was one of the last ones that Louis Lot made himself before Villette took over the manufacturing and
Yes.
so those early ones and that era of the late Louis Lots and then and then the Villettes like that's this golden age Louis Lot
Yeah.
uh, era and so I feel very fortunate right now with the body of which Louis Lot is being altered in Japan at the Altus factory because he played open G sharp system and I
Ah,
play
I see. Okay.
wait open yeah open
Yeah.
G
Open G.
yeah
Yeah. Yeah.
and so anyway so I also have a beautiful Altus flute that's silver. I've always had more luck with silver. I don't feel comfortable playing on gold for some reason. I feel it doesn't suit me so well. And then I've never had any luck playing on platinum. So this is good for my pocketbook.
Yeah.
but but the Altus flute that I have is the 1807 AL model, Altus limited edition, and something that is very compatible with these, having these two instruments is that the Altus flute is based on on the Louis lot design. So especially this 1807 AL, they analyzed the metal of the old Louis lots, and so and tried to recreate a similar type of silver. And then also the construction is with a seamed tube,
Right,
which most modern flutes don't have a seam, that come as a cylinder.
right,
Uh,
right.
and so this way of making them, and I always feel like there's a little bit more warmth to be had with the seam tubes. And so I also got I asked Altus if they would make me a seafood joint for my modern flute from them, because I'm very interested in, like, first of all, the lightness of the Louis lots. They're very light, and with my interest in Alexander technique, why be carrying more weight when you don't need
Yes,
it? Of course you need a B flute joint when you need it, but
yes.
most of the time you don't. And I actually prefer the sound of it with a C flute joint. It
Right,
feels
as
more
did
living.
right, as did Ron Paul, and I remember him saying, and I remember him. He was when he was playing in the Paris Opera Orchestra that he said, when I needed it, something to the effect I read. He said, whenever I needed it, I'd borrow this or that, but otherwise, I don't need that. The seafoot is all I need, and he did pretty well. Uh, but and certainly commercial plays listening, there is no need unless you're going to be playing in an orchestra, especially if you're going to be playing second flute. For commercial work, seafoot is all you need. Um, uh, but yeah, it's interesting that you, as a principal flute, very few principal flute players play only with a C foot, as far as I'm aware and have noticed. So that's very interesting.
What I love about both my Louis lot and my Altus flute is the resonance that they offer. It's not necessarily the power. I'm not that interested in the power. I feel like, when you see great singers, like I'll never forget working my first job in the BBC Symphony. We did Mahler's Song of the Earth with Anne Sophie von Otter. And I'll never forget just watching her walk out on stage at the Royal Albert Hall, and then just so peacefully it and quietly, with this instrument, released the most enormous sound. It could fill, 6,000 seat hall. So I'm more interested in the kind of properties of resonance in the way we use ourselves. And then what I look for in an instrument is supreme resonance, where you can really feel the thing kind of vibrating under your fingers.
Let's qualify what resonance is, because I think resonance to so many people means volume. And I think that's
Oh,
the confusion.
no. So the way I test for resonance is if you can take an instrument and play it very gently and it still rings and the sound keeps alive. It doesn't just go kind of plop and dead. So I think the way to test for resonance is to play in hushed tones and see if you can still feel that aliveness, and you still feel the sound traveling and ringing. That's
You can feel it in your fingers too.
Yeah. So a lot of people feel like they need to get heavier and thicker walled flutes. I'm the exact opposite. Give me lighter and seam tube and uh, seafood joint, so the whole thing can just ring and ring and ring.
Yes.
And then you produce the volume yourself based on opening up all the doors of resonance in yourself. So it's never with force. It's only with opening and sort of releasing.
Yeah.
So
That
so that's the way I think about it.
in your recording career, and you've done a good deal of recording, especially chamber music. You had a trio, Verlaine, for many years, and with your husband, David Harding, as well as the harpist Heidi Crutzen. And you did a lot of transcriptions and adapted a lot of music from other instruments, as well as contemporary music. Uh, Now, was William Bennett someone who sort of spurred that interest in those areas? Because those were certainly areas that he devoted a great deal of time to and gave us great amount of music. Or was this something that you came to on your own, or how did that evolve for you?
Oh, well, I mean, maybe if I speak to the trio question, first of all, it's such a beautiful combination, flute, viola, and harp. There's not a huge amount of repertoire. So we did some commissioning, Murray Schafer, Jeffrey Cotton. We commissioned some transcriptions from Jocelyn Morlock of beautiful Ravel and Debussy pieces that she arranged for trio, just to try and broaden the repertoire for that combination. And I'm really glad we did that. So that's a different motivation there. With William Bennett, uh, his teacher was Marcel Moyse, and that coming through the two of them was this desire to really try and expand the flute's expressive range, because many people say, "Oh, the flute's just fluff." It's not a serious instrument. It's monochromatic, virtuosic at best. And it's what the two of them and others have done is really try and make it as expressive as a human voice, like learn from singers. Uh, Wib, especially learning from string players, and how, I mean, I would say he really elevated the instrument to the level of a violin. And so part of that quest is just cutting your teeth on some of the violin repertoire, or really challenging yourself. I mean, one of my favorite transcriptions that I've ever done was of the Debussy Violin Sonata.
Oh
And
yes.
so those last three sonatas, the trio, the cello sonata, and the violin sonata, they're amongst my absolute favorite pieces of music on the planet. And so hearing a recording of Jacques Thibault and Alfred Cortot from 1929, and hearing all the beautiful colors that Thibault could get out of his violin, almost like breath or flautando, and it's like I want to try and do that, or listening to great singers. I loved listening to Susan Graham singing Ronaldo Hahn songs, so I transcribed a few of those for flute, or Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau singing Ravel songs or Schubert songs. It just it's through that kind of inspiration it makes you I want to do what they do. I want to do that on the flute and turn the sound or go deeply into that vowel sound. you know Singers talk about vowel sounds like spiritual entities, so in terms of storytelling, extracting as much expression from the tone of voice that you're using, the vowel sound, ah or oo or e, I. You can make the mouth into those shapes to get different colors, and then really, that honestly, that is what interests me about playing the flute. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
To try and get all these different aspects of human expression.
Yeah.
And so it's not just being greedy, it's not from any desire to show off and play violin music or whatever. It's from, oh, I want to try and do that with the sound. And so I've done some big transcriptions of Schubert pieces like the Fantasy in C, because I just was so inspired by the piece. And
Yeah.
listening to how violinists would open it up and, you know,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. No, and you speak to the fact of uh, Bennett's obsession with color, and certainly my teacher Tom Neifinger was the first teacher I encountered who was just crazy about those things. He lived for that. Um, I didn't have saxophone and clarinet teachers who necessarily talked about that or emphasized that. It was Tom Neifinger who did it for me, and that brought a whole new awareness. Oh, what can I do on clarinet and saxophone to get different colors other than loud and soft, or
That's
different. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think I don't know. I may be sounding like a old hack here, but to me, I don't hear that many young players playing colors in their recordings.
well, I think it's always nice to invite students. Maybe your listeners uh, can invite their students to. It's never about decibels. It's always about uh, what kind of forte is that? Is it a happy, effusive one? Is it victorious? Is it aggressive? Is it? There's so many different ways different tones of voice it could be, and
Yeah,
often the default I find with students is when they see forte, they'll just go aggressive,
right,
and when they see piano, they'll just go dead. They'll try not. They'll try not to make sound, which is not making music. You
right,
know, they
right,
stop communicating. They just retreat.
right, right.
And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I was just going to say, the most recorded flute player in history is Jean-Pierre Rampal, and at his best, at his playing, he played magnificent colors. You hear the Telmont Fantasies. There's a recording of Italian flute concertos. It's unbelievable. And of course, those were the days he was, especially the 50s, playing on his father's gold Louis lot before he got his gold Haynes. Uh, so, you know, uh, the beauty of colors is everything in music. We may not think about it as much in when we teach it, but it really is, like you said, it's the whole reason for playing music. Um, I think about probably the greatest pop singer in the 20th century in American music would have to be Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra, during his best years in the 50s and 60s into the 70s, but 50s and 60s in particular, more color and more nuance in his phrasing and in his voice than any pop singer ever, of just the pop singers. And everyone has heard Frank Sinatra, easy to hear it. But going back to the 50s and 60s, especially when he was recording on Capitol Records, it's unbelievable. And that's something we don't think about. Well, why is it so great? Oh, he phrased great, of course. Great tunes, great melodies, great orchestrations. But Sinatra's great inflections and colorful way of interpreting the lyrics, uh, it's right out there. And Ron Paul the same way. You
Do you
know,
know who I love for often invite my students to listen to for his quiet playing is Chet Baker.
ha ha ha. Ah, yes,
On his trumpet or his flugelhorn or whatever
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
yeah,
both. But
yeah,
yeah,
there's a kind of way he would rest in the sound
yeah.
that was so healing, I would say.
And
And
even when he sang, even when he
yeah,
would sing, especially in the 50s, beautiful light tenor voice, and he would sing just like he would play. And it was, yes, Chet Baker, and I have to add another one to that is Stan Getz,
uh-huh.
because Stan Getz with more inflection and more colorful way of playing the tenor um, than just about anybody.
Like speaking through the instrument. That's what we want to do is like
Yeah,
speak through the instrument.
but it's the effortless speaking that
Yeah.
it's just like it's just as one and the same. You never feel like there's any effort. My principal sax clarinet teacher Joe Allen used to say, when the effort is lost in the result, the latter is said to be artistic.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Yeah, that it was something he always said, and I liked that a lot. When you were coming up, in addition to your teachers, did you listen to a great deal and were inspired by, uh, whether live or on recordings?
Okay. Well, I have to say James Galway. You know, when I was growing up, I listened to him a lot because it just is so much energy and so much life and so much commitment when he would play. Um, you know, I had many of his records on LP
Yes, I do.
at home as a kid, and
Yeah, yeah,
you know, there's a recording of him doing Daphnis and Chloe with Berlin and Carrie Ann, I think,
yes.
which to this day is still one of my favorite versions of the solo of that. And I wouldn't I wouldn't it's not I wouldn't play it like that myself, but I just nowadays it's not that I would try and mimic it, but I just love it because it's so full of life. So I listen to James Galway a lot. I listen to William Bennett a ton. Um, you know, some Ram Powell too. Uh, flute players that in you know I really looked up to. You know, when I was a student, still look up to. You know, Paul Edmund Davis, Jacques Zun. You know, Peter Lloyd. You know, wonderful people.
Yes.
Uh, you know, who I also had the chance to study with a little bit. Um, well, Peter and Paul. Um, I absolutely love the Baroque flute player Rachel Brown. She's one of my favorite flute players.
Yeah. Did you ever think about or endeavor to play Baroque flute itself?
Yeah, I love Baroque flute. I own one. I've never played it in public. And I seriously studied it for a while, but just that extra stretch here
Oh,
was enough to just give a little bit of trouble to that hand.
yeah, that's arthritis. That's arthritis looking at you.
So I just thought I love this, but I'm not going to injure myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
And what young flute players today have you heard, whether live or on recording, that uh, you find to be extraordinary?
what young ones? Oh, there's so many great ones. Um, well, Sebastian Jacot plays with such life. Um, you're putting me on the spot because I'm not very good with names. There was a wonderful flute player, I think a Russian woman, who just won the Geneva competition.
Oh boy, you got me there now.
You know, really, like that was one of the greatest, most exciting young players I've heard in a long time. I love Sylvia Caradu. She's principal in one of the Paris orchestras right now. She was in Berlin Symphony, and then she went to Vienna for a while. Oh, I mean, I love the young principal in Vienna too. Uh,
Right, and and also the now I'm forgetting the young lady and the concert cabal. Um, uh,
Emily.
Emily, yes, thank you.
Emily's oh Emily and I are similar age. Yes, she's we were at college together. She
Oh,
was two
really?
years above me.
Yes,
Also a student of WIP. She's phenomenal.
wonderful player.
Yeah. Oh, she is absolutely one of my favorite players on the planet.
Yes.
Emily and Jacques and yeah, I love those.
And Emily does wonderful YouTube presentations.
She's a brilliant teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she really is. They're funny, and she it's edited beautifully.
Yeah.
Uh, so I very much enjoy those.
There's two other young students of WIBS that I'd love to mention.
Sure.
Elena Valentin. That's Valentin with a W, I think. Her maiden name was Lugovkina. So some people may have heard her at the NFA under that name, but Elena Valentin, and also Anna Kondrashian was also a student of WIBS. They're wonderful players to watch out for.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not aware of them, and thanks. I'm always interested in hearing new players and wonderful talents, of course. Um, what projects do you have coming up, or did you hope to find yourself working on over the next few years?
Next few years. Well, next week I'm going to Japan.
Okay.
That's the one that's kind of moving large right now. So
Okay.
that's I'm going to do a recital tour and some master classes for Altus in Japan.
Great.
So traveling around a little bit, and then the final concert in Tokyo. We're recording for CD, and so it's quite a
Nice.
romantic. It's a nice, it's a very juicy, romantic program. I call the sort of overarching title for the recital is Romantic Journeys, and it starts off with a beautiful sonata that's not so well known, uh, from 1883 by Max Meyer Albersleben. It is really lovely. It's beautiful. It's a new discovery for me. I think other people have been championing it in recent years, and it's been getting better known. But it's one of those hidden gems that has
Huh.
come out of the woodwork and is really worth playing. And then I'm doing a couple of Gobert pieces, his two sketches, and they're very atmospheric. So the opening Obersleben sonata is very effusive and big-hearted and fun, and then these two Gobert pieces are not played so often, but they're a little bit more reflective and offer repose. And then after the intermission is a piece, a fantasy by Yuzo Toyama. And Toyama was a Japanese conductor and composer. He conducted the NHK Symphony in Japan. Well-known figure in Japan. I always liked when I go there. I always like to include a Japanese piece.
Sure.
And I heard another flute player, Mr. Fukudo, playing this a few years ago, and just fell in love with it. It's so beautiful. It was written in 1985, and it almost sounds, you know the Four Sea Interludes by Benjamin Britten and Dawn.
Yeah.
The Dawn. It has that kind of transparency, and it's very beautiful and atmospheric. And then the Cesar Franck Sonata. So it's kind of the program is bookended by these big, hefty,
Yeah. Yeah.
juicy romantic pieces, and then these quieter but beautiful landscapes. You know.
Right. And they're going to be recorded for CD release.
Yeah,
That's great. Great.
yeah.
And I imagine you'll be picking up your Louis lot where the scale will have been altered by then.
Oh yes, I don't know if it's going to be ready to pick up on this trip, but I'll be doing those recordings on my Altus AL
Okay.
1807.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then other projects. Well, I mean, these are something that might be interesting for your listeners. I just played the Rautavaara flute concerto with Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, and he's a Finnish composer, and there's a nice connection with uh, Tanglewood and Sibelius actually, because when Sibelius was 90 years old, Kusevitsky created a scholarship in Sibelius's honor for Tanglewood, and Sibelius got to choose who the recipient would be, and he chose Rautavaara. So Rautavaara came to Tanglewood and studied with Copeland and others, and ended up going to Juilliard. Anyway, so it's a really, if your listeners don't know the music of Rautavaara, it's really worth checking out. And the flute concerto is beautiful. And talk about doubling, you have to play piccolo and bass flute and alto flute,
Wow.
and it's quite a handful. And anyway, it's very atmospheric, and some of the orchestral writing kind of sounds a bit like Sibelius. It sort of evokes these landscapes and northern landscapes
Right.
and
And so
wildness.
was that recorded by any chance when you get?
Well, it was recorded for the radio, so it went out on the radio station
I
here.
wonder if it's on YouTube at all, or if they've released that at all.
Uh, I, not as far as I know,
Oh,
not our performance, but there are other performances of it on YouTube if people want to check it out. So
yeah.
Rautavaara is Rautavaaa. It's a lot of A's. And
Okay.
don't ask me to pronounce his first name. I can't pronounce it.
I understand. All right. Well, Lorna, thank you so much for your time. And,
You.
we covered a lot of areas today.
Yes, we did.
And I hope it will be helpful and inspiring for the viewers. And look forward to hearing you with the BSO at Symphony Hall and at Tanglewood over the next many years. And it's great that you're up in this neck of the woods now, and I think we're all delighted that you're here. So thanks so much, and have a wonderful tour in Japan. And I'll
Thanks.
hopefully we'll speak in the new year.
Great.
All right,
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
all right, Lana. Thank you very much.